The exile. The stars were silent outside the great black window of the station. An endless sea of light and shadow stretched forever. But inside the metal walls there was only silence, only emptiness. She stood in that silence, her eyes watching, the stars as if they might answer her. But they never did. Her name was forgotten by her people. They had taken it away when they cast her out. Now she was only the exile. Her crime was not murder, not treason, not war. No, her crime was something far more shameful in the eyes of her kind. She was pregnant too late. Among her species, the law was cruel. A woman who carried life outside the proper age was seen as a danger, a curse to the future. And so they judged her, shamed her, and then they sent her here, to the station of silence. The exile's hands rested on her stomach, still flat but carrying the secret of life inside. She whispered words in her language, not for anyone else, only for the unborn child who could hear nothing yet. "You are all I have," she murmured, "and I will not let them take you." The station was old. Its corridors stretched like veins of steel, each one dark except for a few broken lights that flickered as if they might die at any moment. Dust floated where gravity was weak. Doors hissed when she passed, opening to reveal empty rooms filled with forgotten machines. Sometimes she thought she heard the voices of those who once worked here. Sometimes she imagined footsteps following her, but when she turned, there was nothing. Always nothing. Loneliness became her only companion. She counted days by the dim cycle of lights that flicked between day and night. She ate what little food her captors had left her, rationing every bite, drinking the recycled water that tasted of metal. She was not meant to live long here. That was the truth. The exile was not meant to survive. And yet she survived. Every morning, she walked the same halls. Every night, she lay awake, listening. The silence was heavy, pressing on her mind. It whispered to her that she was truly alone, that no one would ever come, that the stars outside were only reminders of her prison. But still, she whispered back to it. Still, she told herself that her child would one day hear her voice. One night, as she drifted in uneasy sleep, she dreamed of her home. She saw the blue skies of her world, the great white towers, the voices of her sisters. But the dream shifted quickly to the council chamber. She saw the judges staring down at her, their faces cold, their voices sharp. "You are too late," they said. "You break the law of life. You must leave." And then the memory of the shuttle, the journey into space, the cold moment when they left her alone with nothing but walls and stars. She woke with a cry, her heart pounding. She pressed her back to the wall, shaking, whispering to herself that it was only a dream. But even awake, the silence seemed heavier than before. The exile wandered the corridors again. But this time, something was different. As she walked past one of the long, dark chambers, she froze. The silence was broken. There was a sound. It was faint. So faint she thought she had imagined it. A scrape, a shift, something metal moving against metal. Her heart quickened. She stood still, ears straining. Then again, the sound clearer now, like a step. Her people had told her she would be alone. They had promised that no one else lived here. But the sound was real. Too real. She crept closer, her breath held tight in her chest. The corridor was dark, the lights flickering weakly. She stepped carefully, every movement slow. Her hand brushed the wall as if to steady herself. The sound came again, closer, louder. The exile's eyes darted to the shadows. Was it her mind playing tricks, or was someone here? She whispered to her child without thinking. "Do not be afraid. I will protect you." At the end of the hall, a door stood half open. A sliver of light glowed from within. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. She had never seen light there before. That room had always been dark. She approached, every step heavy with fear and curiosity. The silence of the station was gone now, replaced by the slow echo of her own footsteps and the faint hum of something beyond the door. Her people had sent her here to be forgotten. But as she reached for the edge of the door, the exile understood one thing. She was not alone. Something, or someone, was inside. The door slid open with a tired hiss, the sound of rust and age. For a moment, the exile froze, her breath trapped in her chest. The light inside spilled across the floor, soft and golden, so different from the cold, flickering lights of the rest of the station. She had never seen this glow before. It was warm. It was alive. Her heart beat faster. The station had always been silent, empty, dead. Yet now, something had changed. Something was moving in the shadows of that room. She stepped inside slowly, her bare feet brushing against the metal floor. The air was different here. It smelled of smoke, of cooked food, and of something strange, something not of her world. On a small table sat a container, half open, filled with scraps of food she had never seen before. It was proof. Someone was here. Her sharp eyes scanned the corners. A tool lay on the ground, shining as if it had been used recently. The exile bent down, picked it up, and turned it in her hand. It was not alien, not made by her people. The shape was strange but clever. Suddenly, behind her, the floor creaked. The exile spun around, her long hair sweeping across her face, her body tense. And there he was. A man. A human. He stood in the doorway, tall and broad, his clothes torn and dirty from use. His face was tired, eyes dark from sleepless nights but alive. When his gaze met hers, he froze as if he had seen a ghost. For a moment, time stopped. Two exiles, two strangers from different worlds, locked in silence. The exile's first thought was fear. Her people had told stories of humans, dangerous, violent, selfish creatures. She pressed her back against the wall, ready to defend herself if needed. Her hand hovered near the sharp edge of the tool. The human raised his hands slowly, palms open, showing he had no weapon. His voice came out low, uncertain. Wait. The exile did not move. She did not understand all his words, but the sound was not angry. It was calm. The man tried again. No harm. He tapped his chest. Human. No harm. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. His words were broken, but she understood enough. He was trying to show peace. For long minutes, they only stared at each other. The air between them was heavy, filled with fear and curiosity. She studied his face, the lines of exhaustion, the rough beard, the scar across his cheek. He was no soldier, no conqueror. He was a survivor, like her. Finally, she lowered the tool, but only a little. Her voice, soft and strange to his ears, broke the silence. This, my place. The human blinked, then gave a small laugh. It was not cruel. It was tired. My place, too. Confusion passed between them. Both had been sent here, both left, to die. And now they had collided in this forgotten station. The exile's stomach twisted with unease. She wanted to know who he was, why he was here. But her language was broken when she tried to form his words. Why? Here? She asked slowly. The man sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. Mission. Ship broken. No way home. His eyes softened. Alone. Until now. His last words lingered in the air. Until now. She looked at him carefully, her heart beating faster. Alone. Yes, she understood that word very well. She had lived with it for too long. The human stepped, closer but slowly, careful not to startle her. Food, he said, pointing at the container on the table. Then he pointed to her. Hungry? Her stomach betrayed her with a sharp ache. She had been living on scraps, her rations nearly gone. But still, she hesitated. Could she trust him? Or was this a trick? The man saw her doubt. He took a piece of the strange food and ate it himself first, chewing slowly, then swallowing. He spread his hands again. Safe. At last, she reached forward, her fingers trembling as she took a small piece. The taste was unlike anything she had ever known, salty, rich, warm. For the first time in many cycles, her body felt relief. A silence passed again, but this time it was not heavy. It was fragile, like a bridge just beginning to form between two broken souls. The exile whispered to herself, her hand brushing her stomach. She did not want him to know her secret yet. Not yet. The man's eyes, however, were sharp. He noticed the way she touched her belly, the way her gaze softened when she did. But he said nothing. Not yet. Instead, he moved to a chair and sat down, heavily, as if the weight of years had pressed on him. His voice came softer now. Name, John. He tapped his chest. John. The exile hesitated. Her name had been taken, but she whispered the word her mother once called her long ago. It was soft, delicate, almost broken. Lyra. John repeated it, clumsy on his tongue but warm. Lyra. She blinked, startled. No one had spoken her name in so long. For a moment, she almost forgot her fear. But the station reminded her. A sudden clang echoed through the walls. The lights flickered violently. Both of them froze, eyes darting to the ceiling. John jumped to his feet, his hand reaching for a tool near him. The exile felt the same chill crawl up her spine as before. The silence of the station was gone again. Something else was moving in the dark. And now she was not the only one who heard it. The clang echoed again through the station, rolling through the metal corridors like the voice of some sleeping beast. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes darted to John, who was already on his feet, gripping a tool like a weapon. For a long, heavy moment, neither spoke. The silence that followed was even worse than the sound itself. Finally, John broke it. Not you? He asked, his voice tight, his eyes sharp. Lyra shook her head quickly. Not me. Another sound came. Soft, distant, like footsteps dragging across the steel floor. John's face hardened. He moved to the door, pressing his ear against it, his muscles tensed as he whispered, "Something's here." Lyra's skin crawled. Her people had sworn she would be alone here, alone to fade away. But this sound, this presence, told her otherwise. The station was hiding secrets. John turned, back to her. His face was grim, but his eyes carried something else, determination. We need, together. He pointed between them. You, me, survive. Her chest tightened. Together? Trust a human? Every story her people had told her said humans were liars, destroyers, dangerous to all they touched. Yet when she looked at him, she did not see a monster. She saw a man who had lived in the same silence, who had fought the same hunger, who carried the same loneliness. She hesitated, but then she nodded once. Together. The word felt strange on her tongue, but it was real. John exhaled slowly as if relieved. He handed her a smaller tool from the table, a piece of metal sharp enough to cut. For you, he said. She accepted it, her hand brushing against his by accident. His skin was warm, rough, human. It startled her, but she did not pull away. They left the glowing room and stepped into the dark corridor. The air was colder here, every shadow deep, every flicker of light threatening. The sound had stopped now, but the silence was not comforting. It was watchful. John walked ahead, careful but steady. Lyra followed, her senses sharp, her grip tight on the weapon. Their footsteps echoed softly. She noticed how he checked corners before turning, how his eyes swept every dark opening. He moved like someone who had survived danger before. After some time, the noise returned. A slow scrape of metal on metal. This time it was closer. Both froze. The sound came from above. Lyra lifted her eyes to the ceiling. The vents, the narrow passages that ran like veins through the station. Something was crawling through them. She felt her skin prickle. John muttered under his breath, then pointed to a nearby control room. Inside, quiet. They slipped into the room, the door sliding shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them until John pressed a button on a panel, and a weak light flickered to life. The room was small, filled with screens that no longer worked, with wires hanging loose. Dust floated like tiny ghosts in the air. John lowered his weapon slightly. Safe, for now. Lyra pressed her back against the wall, her heart still racing. What? It? She asked. He shook his head. Don't know, not human. The silence between them stretched. She studied him again. His face was lined with hardship, but there was something honest in his eyes. He was afraid, yes, but he did not hide it. That made him different from her people, who always wore masks of coldness. Finally, John broke the silence again. Why here? You. The question hit her like a blade. She opened her mouth, but the words stuck. Should she tell him? Should she share the truth of her exile, the shame of her people's law, the secret of her unborn child? Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. John's eyes followed the motion, and for a moment they locked gazes. He seemed to understand something, but he did not push. Instead, he nodded once, as if saying, "When you are ready." Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. He did not demand answers. He gave her space, but she could not let her guard fall. Yet the lights above them flickered again, pulling them both back into the moment. The scrape echoed once more, farther now, moving away. John exhaled. It leaves. She frowned. Will return. He nodded grimly. Yes, we must prepare. They stayed in the room for a while, talking in broken words, their voices low. Slowly, painfully, they built a bridge of language. She taught him small words in her tongue. He shared simple human words with her. They stumbled. They laughed quietly at mistakes, but little by little they began to understand. For the first time since her exile, Lyra felt something different than fear. A thread of connection. A fragile thread, but strong enough to hold her, for now. When they finally left the control room, the corridor seemed a little less empty. The silence was no longer hers alone to carry. They walked together, two strangers from two worlds, both unwanted, both left to die. But now, they were not alone. And somewhere in the dark veins of the station, the thing that crawled in the vents listened, waiting. The station groaned like an old beast in its sleep. Pipes hissed, lights flickered, and somewhere in the shadows, unseen things shifted. Lyra and John walked side by side, their weapons clutched tight, their eyes searching every corner. The silence between them was no longer heavy with fear. It was an agreement, an unspoken bond. They would survive together or not at all. Still, the exile's heart beat quickly. She had learned to live with loneliness. Loneliness was cruel, but it was simple. Trust was harder. Trust carried danger. John stopped suddenly. He crouched near a wall panel, brushing away dust. Look, he said in his broken voice. The panel was covered in strange symbols, lines and curves that glowed faintly as if alive. They were not human markings. They were not from her people either. Lyra's breath caught. She had never seen these before. What is it? John asked. She shook her head slowly. Not mine. Not yours. Different. John pressed against the panel, and it slid open with a hiss. A gust of air rushed past them, warmer, carrying the scent of oil and something faintly sweet. Beyond the panel stretched a narrow passage leading downward, deeper into the station's bones. Lyra hesitated. The passage felt wrong, as though the station itself wanted to hide it. But John's eyes burned with determination. We go, he said. She swallowed hard, then nodded. Together, they stepped into the dark. The walls of the passage were smooth, not rough like the other corridors. Strange lights pulsed faintly inside the metal like veins carrying blood. Lyra reached out and touched one. The light brightened under her fingers, then dimmed again. She pulled her hand back quickly, her heart racing. The deeper they went, the louder the sounds became. Not footsteps this time, but a low hum, steady and alive. It felt like the heartbeat of the station itself. At the end of the passage, they found a door. It was taller than any door they had seen before, marked with the same glowing symbols. John frowned. He placed his hand on the door. Locked. Lyra studied the symbols. Something about them pulled at her memory, as if she had seen them long ago in old stories whispered by her elders. A warning. A secret. She shook her head sharply. We should not open. John gave her a hard look. Why? Danger, she whispered. But John's jaw tightened. Answers. He pressed harder against the door. For a moment nothing happened. Then the symbols lit up, bright and sharp, and the door slid open with a heavy groan. Inside was a chamber unlike any part of the station they had seen. The walls shone with silver metal, smooth and clean, untouched by dust. Machines stood in neat rows, their shapes strange and alien. In the center of the room glowed a sphere of light, floating above a pedestal, humming softly. Lyra froze at the sight. Her chest tightened. Not ours, she whispered again. John stepped closer, his eyes wide with wonder. Power, he said. Maybe way home. Lyra shook her head quickly, fear rising in her. No, wrong, dangerous. But John's hands twitched as if he wanted to touch the sphere, to claim it. The exile stepped in front of him, her voice sharp. Stop! He stared at her, surprise flashing in his eyes. For the first time since they had met, tension burned between them. John's voice grew hard. We need this. To live. To escape. Lyra's eyes filled with fire. We live now. Escape. Later. This. She pointed at the glowing sphere. Not for us. Their voices echoed off the metal walls. The hum of the sphere grew louder as if responding to their fight. And then, the air shifted. The scrape returned, not above this time, but around them. The sound of claws dragging across steel. John spun, raising his weapon. Lyra's heart thundered. From the shadows of the chamber, small red lights blinked awake. Not lights, eyes. Machines hidden in the walls were opening. Figures unfolded from the darkness, metal guardians with sharp limbs and glowing cores. Their heads turned toward the intruders. Lyra's voice trembled. They guard it. John cursed under his breath. The machines stepped forward, their movements slow but certain, their claws clicking against the floor. The sphere pulsed brighter, casting long shadows across the room. The guardians formed a circle around them. John and Lyra stood back to back, weapons ready. Their earlier fight was forgotten, replaced by the simple truth. Survival. John's voice was low, steady. Together. Lyra gripped her blade tighter. Her fear melted into resolve. Together, the guardians closed in. The hum of the sphere became a roar, and the secrets of the station, long buried, began to wake. The guardians closed in, their red eyes glowing like burning coals in the dark chamber. Their movements were slow but certain, their clawed feet striking the floor with metallic clicks that echoed in Lyra's chest. John stood firm, his weapon raised, his body tense and ready. Lyra gripped her blade, her breath sharp and shallow. For a moment they were trapped in a cage of metal and light, the glowing sphere at the center pulsing louder, brighter, as if it fed on the fear inside them. Then, without warning, the guardians stopped. They froze in perfect formation, their glowing eyes fixed on John and Lyra. The air hummed, heavy and electric. Neither dared to move. One guardian tilted its head, a screeching sound grinding from its chest. Then, as if satisfied, it stepped back into the shadows. The others followed, their limbs folding, their eyes dimming, their bodies sinking into the walls until they were gone, hidden once again. Silence. John exhaled slowly, lowering his weapon. They let us go. Lyra shook her head, her eyes never leaving the sphere. Not let, warn, next time, not mercy. Next. John wiped sweat from his brow, his eyes locked on the glowing core in the center of the room. It's power, energy, maybe even a ship signal. His voice carried a desperate edge. This could take me home. Lyra felt the words cut into her chest. Home. The word was heavy, cruel. She no longer had a home. She had been cast out, stripped of her name, her people, her place in the world. All she had was the life inside her, and the fragile bond she had found with him. Her voice came sharp. Not yours, not mine. Dangerous. John turned to her, his eyes burning with something more than desperation, something close to anger. Danger is already here. If we stay, we die. If we use this, maybe we live. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path to the sphere. Her heart pounded as her voice rose. You think only of yourself. Of escape. What about me? What about my child? The word slipped before she could stop it. Her hand pressed against her stomach too late. John's eyes widened, shock flashing across his face. You... pregnant, he whispered. Lyra's breath trembled. The secret she had guarded so fiercely was now bare between them. Her exile, her shame, her truth. It was no longer hers alone. John's face shifted, surprise giving way to something harder. He stepped back, shaking his head. That's why you're here. That's why they sent you away. She nodded slowly, her eyes stinging. Yes, my people call it crime, too late, too dangerous. John's jaw clenched, his eyes flicked to the sphere again. Then this, he pointed at it, his voice sharp. This is not just about me. If it can help us escape, it can save you. Save your child. Lyra's fear deepened. His words sounded like hope, but she heard the hunger beneath them, the human hunger for control. No, she whispered, you don't understand. That thing, it will destroy, not save. John's face darkened. Or maybe you don't want me to use it because you want me trapped here with you. The word struck her like a blade. She stepped back, her eyes wide with shock. You think I want this? She hissed. Prison? Hunger? Fear? John's voice rose, sharp and angry. I've been alone too long. I won't die here. If that thing is my way out, I'll take it. His hand moved toward the sphere. Lyra's instincts flared. She darted forward, her blade flashing as she slashed across his path. Not to strike him, but to block his way. Sparks flew as her weapon grazed the pedestal. John froze, his chest rising and falling with fury. His eyes locked on hers, and for a heartbeat, it seemed they might turn their weapons against each other. But then the sphere pulsed violently, its light bursting bright. The entire chamber shook, alarms blaring, the walls trembling as if the station itself had woken in rage. The Guardian's eyes lit again in the darkness. John cursed, stumbling back. Lyra gritted her teeth, her fear and anger mixing into one. The machines unfolded from the walls once more, their claws scraping, their red eyes blazing. But this time they did not pause. They advanced. Run! John shouted, grabbing her arm. For a heartbeat she resisted, her pride, her fury still burning. But then survival roared louder. Together they ran, sprinting down the corridor as the Guardian surged behind them. The chamber glowed like fire as the machines gave chase. The passage shook around them. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The hum of the sphere turned into a roar, echoing through the veins of the station. They burst through the narrow door, the panel sliding shut just as the first Guardian lunged forward. Metal slammed against metal. Sparks flew. But the door held. Breathing hard, Lyra pressed her back against the wall, her blade still clutched tight. John leaned beside her, sweat dripping down his face, his chest heaving. They did not look at each other. Between them now lay more than fear, more than survival. There was betrayal. The corridor was silent again, but the silence no longer felt empty. It was heavy, trembling with everything unsaid between them. Lyra pressed her hand against the wall, steadying her breath. John stood a few steps away, his back turned to her, his fists clenched at his sides. The door they had escaped through still shook faintly, as if the guardians on the other side were testing its strength. Both of them knew it would not hold forever. At last, John spoke. His voice was low, strained. "You should have told me." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Told you what?" He turned, his face dark, his eyes burning with anger and something else, something closer to hurt. "That you carry a child. That's why you didn't want me near that sphere. You're not just afraid for yourself, you're afraid of what it means." Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to push the truth back into silence. But what? Use was denial now? He had seen too much. "Yes," she whispered. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "I carry life, a life they feared. That is why they cast me out." John's expression shifted, surprise flickering across his face, before hardening again. "Feared? A baby? Why?" Lyra's eyes dropped. Memories of the council chamber flashed in her mind. Cold voices, cruel laws. "My people say children born too late bring chaos. They call it dangerous. Wrong. They said my child could change us." Her voice broke. "So they exiled me. Alone." For a moment, John was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the station around them. Then he stepped closer, his voice softer now. "And you believe them?" Lyra looked up sharply. "What choice do I have? It is their law, their fear. I carry shame." John's eyes softened, but there was steel in his voice. "No. You carry hope, don't you see? If they fear your child, maybe it's because your child is something new, something powerful." Her heart thudded painfully. Hope. The word was bright and cruel at the same time. She wanted to believe it, but fear was stronger. John took another step closer. "That's why we need that sphere, that power. With it, we can protect your child, escape this place, live." But Lyra shook her head fiercely. "No. That power is not for us. It is not life. It is death. Did you not see the guardians? They protect it for a reason. If we touch it, we bring doom." John's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists. "Or maybe it's the only way out. Maybe your people feared you for the same reason. They fear change, they fear power, but I'm not afraid." Her eyes widened. "You speak like them. You want to take, to use, no matter the cost. That is why my people call humans dangerous." The words stung him. His face twisted, his voice sharp. "Dangerous? I didn't put you here. I didn't call your baby a curse. Your people did that, not me." Silence cut between them like a blade dot. For the first time since meeting, Lyra saw the fury in his eyes, the desperation that had kept him alive all this time. He was not just a survivor. He was a man fighting to escape his own cage. And she was in the way. Her stomach turned. Could she trust him? Could she place her unborn child's fate in his hands? A faint sound broke the silence, the scrape of metal in the distance. The guardians were searching. Time was running out. John leaned against the wall, his voice rough but steady. "Listen to me. If we don't find a way out, they'll kill us. You, me, your child. Everyone loses. But if we risk it, if we take the power, maybe we win." Lyra stared at him. His words were heavy with truth, and yet, deep in her chest, the old fear screamed louder. "My child," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I swore to protect this life. I cannot risk it for your hope." John's shoulders slumped. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his voice came cold, quiet. "Then you're choosing death." Lyra's breath caught. The words were not a threat, but they felt like one dot. They stood in silence, two broken souls divided by fear and desperation, trust unraveling into something sharper. The station groaned again, the lights flickering. The sound of claws echoed through the corridors, closer this time. The Guardians were coming. John straightened, gripping his weapon. We fight together. But after this? His eyes locked on hers. I'm going back to that chamber. Lyra's chest ached. She knew he meant it. She knew nothing she said could stop him. Her hand pressed against her stomach. She whispered to the life inside her, too soft for him to hear. I will protect you even if I must protect you from him. The scrape grew louder. The Guardians were near. And as the shadows closed in, the fragile bond between John and Lyra cracked, ready to break under the weight of truth. The scrape of metal grew louder, like claws tearing at the bones of the station. Shadows flickered across the corridor walls. The Guardians were hunting. John tightened his grip on his weapon, his jaw set in hard determination. Beside him, Lyra stood tall, one hand resting on her stomach, the other holding her blade. Their eyes met for only a heartbeat. There was no trust in that look anymore. Only necessity. The floor shook as the first Guardian emerged from the dark, its red eyes glowing like fire. Behind it, two more unfolded from the walls, their sharp limbs scraping sparks from the steel. Together, John said quickly, his voice firm. Lyra nodded once, though her heart was heavy. Together. The first Guardian lunged. John swung, his weapon hard, striking sparks from its metal body. The creature reeled back, screeching, but its glowing core burned bright. Lyra darted forward, her blade flashing. She slashed across its leg joint, and the Guardian staggered, collapsing with a metallic crash. Another leapt at them. John shoved Lyra aside and swung again, his strike knocking the machine against the wall. But the third Guardian was faster. It scuttled along the ceiling, claws reaching down. Lyra looked up, her eyes wide. John! He spun just in time to raise his weapon, but the Guardian struck, its claw slashing across his arm. He cried out, blood splattering against the metal floor. Without thinking, Lyra lunged. She drove her blade deep into the machine's chest. The Guardian convulsed, its core flickering before it collapsed in a heap of sparks. Breathing hard, she turned to John. His face was pale, his hand pressing against his wound, but his eyes burned with the same fire. We can't fight them all, he said. We need the sphere. Lyra shook her head sharply. No. That power will kill us. He staggered, his teeth clenched in pain. Or it will save us. Lyra, listen to me. We don't have time for fear. We need it. Her heart pounded. The Guardians were regrouping, their eyes glowing brighter as they advanced again. She knew he was right about one thing. They couldn't survive like this forever. But was the sphere truly salvation, or was it doom? She looked at John, at the blood dripping from his arm, at the fire in his eyes. She thought of her child, fragile and silent inside her, and she knew the choice would decide not only her fate, but the fate of a life yet to be born. The Guardians closed in. John grabbed her arm, pulling her back. We run to the chamber. Now. They sprinted through the corridor, the machines screeching. Behind them, sparks rained from the ceiling as alarms blared. The station shook as though angry that its secrets had been disturbed. At last they reached the chamber. The sphere still floated above its pedestal, glowing brighter than before, pulsing like a living heart. The Guardians poured into the room. After them, forming a circle. John staggered forward, raising his weapon toward the sphere. This is it, he shouted over the roar. It's our only chance. Lyra's breath caught. Her instincts screamed at her to stop him, to protect her child from the unknown power. She raised her blade, stepping between him and the sphere. No, she said, her voice trembling but strong. I will not risk my child. John froze, staring at her. The Guardians moved closer, their claws scraping the floor. Then we die. Here, he said. For a moment, everything slowed. Lyra's heart pounded like thunder. Her child's future flashed before her. Darkness or light. Fear or hope. She lowered her blade, not in surrender but in choice. Do it, she whispered. John's eyes widened. Do it, she repeated. But if you touch that sphere, you protect us. My child comes first. John's face hardened with resolve. He nodded once. I promise. He stepped to the pedestal, his wounded hand reaching out. The guardians lunged at once, their screeches filling the chamber. Lyra screamed, raising her blade to fight them off. John's fingers brushed the sphere. Light exploded. The chamber filled. With blinding brilliance, a roar like the birth of a star. The guardians froze, their bodies convulsing, their glowing cores flickering out one by one. They collapsed in heaps of lifeless metal, their claws still twitching. Lyra shielded her eyes, clutching her stomach as the light poured over her. For a moment she felt warmth. Not pain, not death, but warmth. As if the sphere itself was alive. Then, silence. The light dimmed. The sphere floated still, glowing faintly now, calm. The guardians were gone. John collapsed to his knees, his hand trembling. Lyra rushed to him, kneeling beside him. His face was pale, but he was alive. He looked up at her, his eyes weak, but filled with something she had not seen before. Hope. It listened. He whispered, "It chose us." Lyra's chest ached. She pressed her forehead to his, her voice soft. No, it chose the child. For in that moment she felt it, the faintest echo inside her, stronger than before. Her child stirred, safe, alive. The sphere had not destroyed them. It had protected them. The station was quiet again. The danger was gone. But nothing would ever be the same. John leaned against her, his strength fading. Now, we have a chance. A future. Lyra held him, her blade slipping from her hand. For the first time since her exile, she believed him. Together, in the silence of the ancient station they had survived. Not just for themselves, but for the life that might one day change everything. The exile was no longer alone. And the child, her child, was no longer a curse. It was hope.